Welcome to Emerge Dynamics. Emerge Dynamics. The podcast for those who manage and invest in middle market private companies across the globe. We're telling the stories of the unsung champions who take enormous risks every day to weave the fabric of our societies. Those who collectively, from the multi-trillion-dollar largest market on the planet, we're diving into the dynamics of what makes some of them emerge from their peers and create incredible returns and impact on their communities. This is Emerge Dynamics.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Emerge Dynamics podcast. I'm joined today by what I think you're going to find is a fascinating guest. His name is Ali Beck, and he is a blockchain and Bitcoin expert. And you may remember from several episodes ago, we did a series on money, on Bitcoin, and I promised we'd bring some people in who know more than me, who could explain it even more. And I think Ali certainly qualifies. He did his senior thesis on cryptography and security of Bitcoin using elliptical curve cryptography, something I know about, but don't know a whole lot beyond that. So he's somebody who knows this stuff very well. So with that, Ali, thanks so much for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, David. Glad to be here.
Ali, I want to get into your company in just a bit, HollaEx. But before we go there, I was thinking what might be a great way to start is we've talked in the past, or I've attempted at least in the past, to explain to our audience, who is mostly made up of business owners and in business investors, why they should start paying attention to things like, I guess we'll put them, you can even maybe help us desegregate this, but things like blockchain, tokenization of assets, and Bitcoin, right? There's so many Main Street businesses that just think this is still some fringe thing that they don't have to pay attention to. And I think the world's changing. So maybe we can kick off our conversation there.
Sure, yeah. So in a nutshell, it's an emerging technology. It creates a foundation to do financial activities in a different way. So we had banks, we had all these financial institutions, and we've created a model in the past 100 years. And with the emergence of Bitcoin, we now have a different way of doing all these financial activities and, all the blockchains and crypto. The whole space, there's so much going on and there's so many different use cases. There's so many different things happening. So it's a bit overwhelming for someone looking outside, what exactly is this for? I hear from a lot of people, what is this Bitcoin for? What can I do with this? Or what is Ethereum? What are all these smart contracts? But fundamentally, there are a lot of different use cases that these technologies, there are a lot of different problems that they address. Initially, when Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin, what he was really focusing was a P2P payment system. He wanted to create a new form of currency, a new form of money where you can transfer value between two parties. But over time, there were a lot of other things that people started to realize that now we kind of got a programmable money, a money where you can give it to developers and they can come up with a lot of different ideas without talking to all these bankers and stuff. And people came up with a lot of different use cases. To sort of just highlight some of these use cases, I think one of the main things is really tokenization. With real world assets, tokenizing companies, stocks, tokenizing art, tokenizing games, there's just pretty much anything you can think of can be tokenized in one way or the other. Previously, it was very hard with the traditional systems to sort of utilize these for different purposes. But now, because of the blockchain, it's very easy to create sort of automation, create different kind of logic on top of these tokens. So I can hold essentially a token on the blockchain and I can transfer it very easily. So that simplicity in it creates a lot of opportunities. Other sectors that I think also are very, very interesting is primarily around automation in the crypto space. So you can have a money that can be automated. You can write a smart contracts. You can write programs. And it's very interesting when you give a money that, or a system, a financial system that can be programmed. So a lot of developers start building on top of that without requiring access from all these financial institutions. And that's why they can come up with a lot of different interesting ideas. For example, all the systems around how loans work or, in the traditional financial systems, people build extremely complicated technologies in a trustless way on the blockchain.
Could we dive into maybe that specific one? So a loan. So if I'm going to, maybe I'm the bank, I'm going to lend money to someone. Talk to us about how the tokenization helps me do this better.
Sure. When you go to a bank, you essentially need to fill out a lot of do a lot of paperwork. You need to check your credit score. Who's this guy? Can he pay back? Is he going to default? There are a lot of questions there. And then they have to look at your transaction history, your background and all of that. It's a bit of a manual process, but in the blockchain, a lot of these are transparent. And one thing that is really interesting is, for example, let's say I have Ethereum, right? Instead of doing all that paperwork, I immediately can use that as a collateral in a smart contract, and I can borrow against that some USD Tether or USDC or whatever. And I can use that liquidity to buy for some other stuff while I still have my Ethereum. So all of these stuff can be automated with a click. So you don't have to go and do all that paperwork. This is my collateral. You write a contract, all of these contracts, all of that can be automated. The entire process can be automated on a blockchain. And the beauty of it is that you don't actually have to there's no organization here that enforces this. It's the code that essentially enforces that. If, for example, in this case, if Ethereum price goes down and it cannot cover the amount that I borrowed, depending on how you can you want to structure that smart contract, you can liquidate it automatically. So neither party actually need to trust each other in this case. This is just one example. You can think of this example as something that can happen, but there are a lot of different use cases that you can essentially build with these technologies, and you can kind of come up with different ways that you can simplify all these financial interactions and make it more automated. So all that all that logic, when you give it to a programmer from a programmer's perspective, it's pretty intuitive. I can actually write code and I can create all these sequence of actions very easily. Whereas in the bank, there's no foundation to essentially build that. It needs to be a paper that is approved by somebody, and then all that bureaucratic process. So now we kind of have a financial system where we can program all of that. And then that is extremely fast. It's extremely efficient. And it's something that also is pretty open. So you can build a lot of other logic on top of this. And it's more
Question. I'm thinking through a future scenario. Would I be able to tokenize my credit history? Tokenize, if I have a piece of property I'm going to put up as collateral, I tokenize that. And when I go to the bank, do I just provide these tokens as a way to accelerate the underwriting process?
That's an interesting idea. Yes, you can tokenize pretty much anything. The issue in general with these tokens is there's the real world where you and I interact physically, and then there is the digital world. When things happen in the digital world, enforcing all these digital activities is extremely easy. So because you have the blockchain as the underlying technology, I can enforce everything. But when it comes to real physical interactions, there needs to be a party that enforces some of these. So we still kind of need middlemen to make sure that these tokens is what you say it is, because otherwise, you are saying essentially there's a real world value, and credit score is not actually a physical thing. So that perhaps can be something that can be tokenized in a digital way. But anything that requires a physical presence and a connection to the real world, would require a third party to enforce that. But at the same time, the third parties in these cases, they have a much easier job, because the entire process, other than the fact that it connects, the connection between the real world and the digital world,
right? I would say
everything else is actually automated on the blockchain. So they just have one simple task to ensure that the underlying asset or whatever this token represents is actually what it is, which is where regulation comes in. And I think primarily initially when a lot of these tokens got out, a lot of people started to run a lot of scams, and a lot of malicious activities were going on. And part of that was because there was there's no regulation. So people are saying, okay, this is what it is. And then it's actually not. So they're trying to connect something in real world. But when you truly connect that and ensure that through some form of regulation or some middleman, then it becomes extremely interesting, because now you actually have a very dynamic, flexible digital world on the blockchain where you can create all these different activities, and you can create all these complex financial systems. And then you can connect that with the real world to represent some form of value. For example, real estate is a very good example of this, that a lot of projects have been doing stuff like that. So real estate is a piece of land, like that ownership essentially like is sort of physical. Like there is a government that essentially gives you the title deed, and that's what the representation of the ownership of that. So if a third party creates a token that represents the real estate, the asset, now we have a token in the digital world, and then it connects to all of these different blockchain activities. You can get a loan against that. You can trade it. You can actually do all these forms of activities. And while everything is sort of like being in a way regulated with that third party. So what we kind of like missed in the early days, like of these tokenization, was that there were no like third party in the middle. Like there was no regulation, so that it kind of went wild. But now people started to notice like, okay, wait a minute, this is actually really interesting. I can do all of these stuff as long as I can have a foundation that connects the real world with the digital world. So we had a client. They were dealing with premium wines, and
what I was going to ask you about. Yes.
So they were trading these premium wines internationally, and the business was like pretty old. Like they've been doing it for some time out of Hong Kong. And what happened was the original founder, the chairman, basically put his son in charge, and then the son started to like run the business, and the son had the idea of like, why don't we sort of modernize like this entire process? Like we have a process that's built for many decades. Like, can we automate that by tokenizing these wines? So I want to create a token that represent these wines. And then essentially like you can have the ownership of these wines, and that would allow people to be able to trade these wines. So I can trade this wine digitally without, all the complications around that. And then this company essentially is ensuring all these transfers and all these transactions. And if you want to actually deliver the wine itself, like they can send it to you. So this is like one of those examples of there is a real world like asset, a premium, extremely expensive wine been sitting there for a century. And then you have the digital world. And now like these guys created a connection between the wine and that digital world and representing that wine as a token. So now a buyer from another country can buy this wine, or even we can go beyond that. You can buy a fraction of this wine, or a fraction of like, maybe this wine is going to go up in price so people can even speculate. So, this is just one idea, but you can extend that to a lot of different use cases. One other thing that, was really interesting was like the art museum in Korea. They have certain arts that they did certain artworks that they actually wanted to get from Japan. So these artworks are being held in Japanese museums. So they kind of wanted to buy some of these. And then the idea is to sort of raise funds through people, Koreans, who want to get these artworks from Japan, and then fractionalizing it. So like, you can buy a fraction of this artwork. So the artwork is a token, and then you can create multiple tokens, create fractions of it, and then do fundraising through that, and then be able to actually buy the artwork from Japan. And
that underway now? They're doing this today?
This has been in progress. It's kind of a new project, but the idea of it is like, there's nationalism involved, and then it kind of like has participation of people, and that's what makes it quite interesting. So.
Wow, what a great blend. Those are great examples. Thank you. And I hope people are picking up on this. These are examples of physical assets starting to, blend or merge with the digital world here, right? And allows, title transfer is huge in this space. If I could summarize.
It's, trillions of dollars.
This is not small, right?
This is extremely big. And the way that the traditional system works around is like really, really old. So even with like stocks, for example, like I ask these questions from different people, like every time I meet, I'm like, do you want to actually have do you want to have a share certificate on a paper, or would you rather it to be a token on the blockchain? And when you ask someone that's like a bit older, like they're like, of course, the share certificate, like I want to have the paper. But when you actually ask millennials or like, younger generation, Gen Z, like they would actually rather to hold that token because they think that's much easier to keep. It's like a digital, thing. Where am I going to put the paper? Like, what am I going to do with that? Like, what if it gets destroyed? Like, actually like that is really the approach is very different. The way people think is very different in different generations. And then when you realize that it's not just about a digital aspect of it, like keeping it digitally. If I keep it digitally, that means like I can actually do a lot of different interactions with it digitally as well. I can maybe borrow against it, or I can send it to somebody easily. Like the transferability of it is like much easier. You can trade it much easier. So that's why like it opens up a lot of different opportunities. And I think while like a lot of it, as I said, like it was quite wild, like a couple of years ago when this whole thing has started, but with some oversight, some regulation, some third parties in the middle, just doing very little, just ensuring certain things, like this can actually grow extremely fast. So that's why I think it's something that people should really pay attention to.
I've heard some people talk about a near future where you can buy a car or maybe even a house with almost as simple as a Venmo app, right? And a tokenization could allow that.
I mean, totally. Yeah. Why not? Like, why do I have to go through all that process to buy a property? Why do I have to pay like so many different middlemen, all these fees? Like you want to pay your taxes and everything, but why do you have to pay all these different middlemen that are doing like in
title search? There's insurance for the title search.
Yeah. And all of that, it takes time as well. Like these trades are extremely slow because it has to go through a lot of like these process. If you can do it like on the blockchain, if I can just like make this trade and that trade involves all of that, as I said, like, the automation, if you want to add insurance on top of it, like all of that can also be done on the blockchain. You can get an insurance, you can do all of that with one click, and all of that can be simplified and, done in a, much more efficient way. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that? But at the same time, for a lot of people, it's like, if I have this title deed, like as a token, what does that represent? Like, am I owning anything? And then that's the same question as like the paper. Like, you're just not used to it. Like, what does that paper represent? Like, I mean, it's just like your mindset, because like that's been going on for years. Like people know how that works, so they're comfortable. But like the same thing essentially can be applied to a token. You just need to look at it differently. That's why like the younger generation, because they don't have a lot of experience like holding these papers, like they would prefer this, because for them it's like a choice between these two and they're not comfortable with either one of these, but they prefer the digital version. It's like, right. So it's just a different approach to like how you handle things. And ultimately, I believe it's much better. Like there's no doubt it's way more efficient and simpler to use.
So your company, HollaEx, and I have to admit, when I first went to your website, I didn't fully grasp it. And it may be because I'm not in your world as much as you are, but I think you're using your company to address some of these things that you and I are talking about. Could you share with us, what does HollaEx do and how does it solve some of this?
Sure. So HollaEx in a nutshell, we provide white label solutions for businesses, white label crypto and blockchain solutions, primarily around exchanges, trading, payments in the blockchain space. To give you a little like story about how this started, I did my Master of Computer Science and I'm a tech guy. I came from tech background and I was fascinated by like, Bitcoin's technology and how the tech works primarily. And we started a meetup in Seoul, South Korea back in 2014. And we basically like, opened it to anyone that was interested about Bitcoin. And this sort of like, got me to interact with a lot of different people, like non-tech people that were interested in Bitcoin. They were like coming from all these different backgrounds, doing different types of businesses. They all had like different mindset. They were all looking at this whole technology in a different way. I was fascinated about the tech, the computer science, the computer networks around it. Like these people are like businessmen that are like trying to do all these different things and they don't fully understand the tech, but they're like, okay, wait a second, this actually had like some use cases for me. I can do this or I can do that, or, it opens up like some opportunities. And over time, I realized like there's actually a lot of like businesses that want to utilize it. And they all have one thing in common. They all don't understand the tech. And the tech aspect of it is extremely difficult for people to build. Like, we had a client that spent $1 million on the tech infrastructure, spent like couple $1 million like on developers and development of like a trading platform. And essentially like he got nowhere with that because like even just hiring developers wasn't like not only it takes time, but there's no guarantee because like this technology is kind of different. It's Web3. Like most developers you find out there, like they're familiar with Web2 and stuff, just a standard developments. So it's kind of a different approach. So people were kind of like, they get confused and then they spend like years trying to like build something and they have a very good idea. These are like businessmen that got like really good ideas. They found the problem. They know the problem because like they've been doing that in the traditional space and they think like, okay, this solution using the blockchain and these tokens or whatever, like can make things more efficient. So they're trying to do something, but then ultimately they fail simply because like development and, building that infrastructure is extremely hard. So with HollaEx, we created a suite of tools that essentially a businessman without knowing like how blockchain works, how these tokenization, all that works, you can just go through like simple processes and then they can create whatever it is that they want. Primarily, we built a very interactive flow around how you build an exchange, a trading platform that essentially allows you to onboard your users, being able to like create an asset, a digital asset, add it to the blockchain, and then be able to like add it to the exchange and offer this to people so that they can actually hold it. Because that's like one of the most important things. Like all these token stuff that we were talking about is like, how do I actually hold this? Like that's the first question that people ask.
Yes.
So like we solved that problem, holding this, having a wallet. So your users would have, your clients would all have like, their wallets built. They can hold these digital assets and they can interact very easily without like going through all these complicated blockchain activities. There's a nice user interface. And then you're able to like build upon that. So like we provide a set of tools, APIs for developers, or pretty much the sky is the limit. You can build all different types of like integrations and interactions with the blockchain in the traditional world. So the good thing is like even developers that don't know much about blockchain, they understand these APIs. It's very easy to use. So they can build on the blockchain. So it kind of like, bridges developers, just Web2 developers to build the stuff on top of the blockchain and be able to like provide these services. And all of that like can be white labeled. So you put like your business logo, this is just all these tech tools that.
So if I have the wine company, I can white label it as my brand.
Exactly.
Or my service. Okay. And these are our wine tokens. You own this much of this barrel or this bottle or something. And yes.
Pretty much. Like you can customize everything. You have your own website. You can create all these different logics around it. So some people use it for tokenization. Obviously, some people, there are gamified tokens. They have like these tokens in games as part of the games. Now they want to like kind of like be able to like put it on the blockchain, be able to like do some stuff more, some more things with this. So that's another use case. And the sky is the limit pretty much. Like we have the real estate projects for tokenizing real estate and also like just standard on and off ramp, like crypto that's been going on since day one. It's just always been an issue. Like how do I get fiat into crypto? How do I like get that crypto back into fiat and just providing all of that. So these are like different modules that you can add to the platform and put your logo, your own website, all of that, customize it and build a business around that. It's very useful for businesses that have maybe an established business already or have some ideas, have like clients and market that they know how to tackle. They understand like the problem. They know like the solution. They just like really need something to put it together and then be able to like offer that with the digital world and blockchain.
So I'm curious, your offering is being deployed all around the planet in numerous different countries. Yes.
Right.
Is there a certain area of the world that you see is adopting this or thinking along these lines faster? And I'm wondering too, if we could even contrast the United States with the rest of the world. I think we have listeners all over the world, but most are in the United States. Is the United States ahead, behind? Is it all the same?
I'd say a lot of projects in the US, they are more creative because I think the foundation is sort of already built. Like there is on and off ramp of crypto. There are more people exposed to crypto in a way. So entrepreneurs that already have maybe established business or they're trying to do something new, we have startups, SMEs, like all different range, like bigger companies. They kind of like, because there's a foundation of crypto, they can think of new things that the next thing that can be done, or like, how do I utilize it in different ways? Whereas like a lot of, for example, emerging markets, a lot of the focus is like just on and off ramp of crypto. Like, how do I actually buy like Bitcoin, or like how do I buy Ethereum?
Yes.
So the use cases are different, but there's a need because people kind of like found, okay, as long as they have internet infrastructure, which is pretty much all around the world, maybe except like a few countries, you can try to like build a system where you can automate a lot of these processes, get people on board. Because like that's what we've been doing in the crypto space, is like getting people on board. Like that's why, a lot of these exchanges became extremely popular, because they could get people to get onboarded and then at least like hold crypto first. Like you got to like have a wallet to begin with. And then once you have that, once you establish that, that's why I'm saying like, in the US, like that's sort of established, like people get that, you can go to the next level. You can actually like come up with like all different ideas. And I think as part of that, like regulation is also very important, because it's been not very favorable. Like, there hasn't been a lot of like favorable regulation around like crypto. But if that changes, like it even opens up, I think, a lot more opportunities in the US.
I bet. And I wonder, you've talked about automation several times during our conversation. And I think when you and I last spoke, you talked about automation that you're applying even internally within your company. I think people would be interested in hearing about that, because even if they're not in the same space as you, we can all benefit from that. Can you share what you're doing with automation internally just to help your company be more efficient?
Exactly. So we're a pretty lean team. Like, we don't hire a lot of people, and we try to like have people hire people that can automate this stuff. They can build something that would automate it. And then there's that mentality that if you do something twice, you shouldn't do like the manual process a third time. Like, trying to just like come up with a way that you would want to automate that. So everybody that we hire essentially like has some programming skill that can automate that process to make it like more efficient and easier. And a lot of it like was recently also with the AI got like, a lot more simplified. So you don't need to actually like, as a business developer, like you don't really need to have like all the programming skills to automate something to improve the flow. Okay. Some of these sales pipeline, for example, or business processes to like get people onboarded, or there are a lot of different areas within all that scope. Like, as a person that can use AI, you can actually like build certain things. You can, communicate with all these different AI tools out there, and then automate like a lot of these processes. And that goes really well with also the blockchain, because blockchain is a money that you can program, and AI really understands that, and they really love each other. So you can just like create whatever you want, and then come up with like any idea, give it to the AI, and build a tool around that without knowing much about programming. So like we have people that don't have any like programming degree, or they haven't even gone through any courses or anything. Like, they got business background. They spent like a little time like figuring out how to use like what is this code, like what's the general concept, and how can I use this AI to sort of like connect these one another. And that's what we've been primarily like using. So like a lot of these processes are automated. We don't really do a lot of manual work. We just sit there, do a few line of code to automate this process. Or like, how do we make our life easier? We don't want to do the same thing over and over again manually. Let's just like build something that does that. And then that's the approach. So like, we kind of like think traditionally, like companies would hire a lot of people to like do all of these tasks like manually. Whatever the problem is, like I just throw some people at it. Like that's a businessman mindset. But now it's like, there's a problem. Like, figure out how you can automate that with like these tools, figure out how you can use AI. And then you essentially need people that are able to like come up with these logics. Like, how do I actually build a code that would automate that? So you're kind of like an operator as an employee, or like an operator. And then you have all these like little AI tools and little different programs that you're managing in your own world. And then they're the ones that are doing things. So,
and that's applicable in any industry almost, right? You don't have to be in your industry to take advantage of that.
Pretty much. I mean, you can use it literally in any industry. Like in our industry, I think because the entire thing is sort of like in a digital world, it's applicable to the whole scope of it. But like in some industries, obviously if it's something physical, but even those, like when you connect like all these machineries with AI, and then now we are seeing with robotics and stuff, even it's affecting, I think, those areas, and we're going to see a lot of changes in the future.
So Ali, I think there's so much more we could learn from you. This is fascinating. I want to be respectful of your time. Before we close out, just anything else that you think our audience should know? I mean, people who work in Main Street mostly, but what parting words would you have for them?
I think it's going to be a very interesting year with AI and the blockchain 2025. AI is growing extremely fast. Like we're already seeing it's outpacing like any other technology that's been there. And blockchain, just think of it as like sort of a value, sort of a financial system that can be programmed. And connecting these two pieces, it just creates a lot of like interesting applications. I didn't also mention that I just wanted to quickly talk about is like also stable coins. We can see like, how the fiat currencies, like as a form of a stable coin, are becoming like more and more popular these days. And, you can see a lot of like businesses that are accepting that. So just watch out for these technologies, trying to like come up with a strategy. If you're doing it, if you're a business that's been doing like things traditionally, like things are going to change like very rapidly. So before you know it, you just got to like, use some of these tools, get on board it, and then connect your business and modernize it, because it's just like going forward so fast. And I think people, like when I look at any industry, people who've been doing that business who know like the inside, who have the inside of like that business, they're the ones that can really push it to the next level. And what they really need to understand is like, how do I use these technologies? How do I automate them? So you got to really pay attention, I think, this year to that, like moving forward. And this is going to be an extremely exciting year, I think, from a technology standpoint. So
I feel like we've taken a glimpse into the future. And maybe it's the near future, actually, that we're talking about, not the distant future. Ali, if people want to learn more about you or your company, where should they go?
You can visit HollaEx.com. So we have pretty much like all the information. You can visit our docs, and you can also find me on X, Cryptolit. So yeah.
Excellent. Thanks. Well, we'll put that in the show notes. And Ali, hopefully we can check in the future as this world changes on us and hear from you again. But thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Yeah.